Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be exploring some pretty fascinating stuff. We're talking about dreams, these tiny creatures that have, changed the course of history and visions of the future. It's a lot to unpack, but I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Well, what I find so fascinating about these seemingly unrelated topics is that they all kind of tap into this very human need to understand, like where we fit in, especially when things feel kind of chaotic.
Yeah, totally. Like, when you look back at history, there are all these moments where things could have gone in a totally different direction, and it makes you wonder what really tipped the scales.
Exactly. And that's where our deep dive comes in today.
Right. So we've got some excerpts from a really cool NPR show called Throughline. Specifically, we'll be looking at an episode called Dreams, Creatures, and Visions. It's got this really interesting blend of history, psychology, even some music.
Yeah, it's like they've woven together all these different threads to show us how, seemingly insignificant things can actually have a really big impact.
Okay, so let's start with dreams. Did you know that way back in the day, dreams were considered super important? Like they were thought to be messages from the divine or something?
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, across many different cultures, dreams held this really special significance. People saw them as, prophetic or carrying messages from, yeah, a higher power, like you said.
But then somewhere along the line, dreams kind of got, I don't know, downgraded. Like we stopped paying so much attention to them.
Right. With the rise of, the Enlightenment and the emphasis on rationality and science, dreams were kind of pushed aside. They were seen as just random, meaningless noise from our brains.
Until, of course, Freud came along and was like, wait a minute, there's more to this.
Yeah. Freud's work with psychoanalysis really brought dreams back into focus. He suggested that, maybe they weren't divine messages, but they still offer this incredible glimpse into our unconscious desires and fears and all those unresolved issues we carry around.
So, okay, maybe not messages from the gods, but still pretty important stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Freud believed that by analyzing the symbolism and the recurring themes in our dreams, we could gain a deeper understanding of ourselves.
And speaking of dreams that inspire action, have you heard of Marcus Garvey? He was a black empowerment leader in the early 20th century. And this guy had a dream, a literal dream, about a shipping line that would connect Africa, Europe, and America.
Oh, yeah. Garvey's vision was incredibly powerful, especially in the wake of World War I. There was so much social and political upheaval at that time, and Garvey's idea of connecting people of African descent across the globe really resonated with a lot of people.
And people were so drawn to his vision that they actually invested their own money in this Black Star Line.
They did, which really speaks to how much they believed in Garvey's dream and in this idea of self-determination and connection to their African heritage.
It's amazing how a dream can become a movement like that.
It is. But as we often see with these big, ambitious dreams, the reality can be a lot more complicated.
Yeah, the Black Star Line ended up facing a lot of challenges, mismanagement, external pressures, you name it.
Exactly. It ultimately failed, but even so, the fact that so many people were wanting to invest in Garvey's dream shows just how powerful a collective vision can be.
So dreams can inspire, but they can also be fragile.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit here. We've talked about dreams. Now let's talk about something that might seem completely unrelated. Creatures.
Creatures, how do they fit into all of this?
Well, get this. Even the tiniest creatures can have a huge impact on history. Did you know that mosquitoes, for example, played a pivotal role in the American Revolution?
Oh, yeah, I see where you're going with this. We often forget about how much diseases have shaped the course of history.
Right. We tend to focus on the big battles and the political strategies, but sometimes it's the smallest things that can really tip the scales.
And in this case, it was mosquitoes carrying malaria. They really devastated the British troops who were fighting in the American South.
It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. You have these grand ideals of liberty and revolution, and then bam, a tiny mosquito comes along and throws a wrench in the whole thing. History is full of surprises like that, isn't it?
It really is. And it reminds us that the stories we tell about history are often simplified. We need to remember that there are all these complex factors at play, both big and small.
Makes you wonder what we might be overlooking in our own time, right?
Absolutely. We tend to focus on the most obvious or dramatic events, but what about those subtle, unseen forces that are shaping our world right now? It's something to think about for sure.
Okay, so we've got dreams, creatures, and now for another unexpected twist, let's talk about rats.
Rats, as in like the ones scurrying around in the subway.
Well, yes, but think bigger. This isn't just about our everyday encounters with rats. This is about their epic journey across the globe.
Oh, I remember reading about this. Scientists used DNA analysis to trace the migration of the brown rat from East Asia all the way to New York City.
It's like a detective story, but with rodents.
It is. And what's fascinating is that their journey actually mirrors human migration patterns and the impact of globalization.
So they're like tiny furry stowaways on the Globalization Express.
Exactly. As humans expanded their trade routes and established new settlements, rats followed right along, taking advantage of the opportunities that came with human activity.
It's a reminder of how interconnected everything is, how even the smallest creatures can leave their mark on the world.
And it also highlights the unintended consequences of our actions on the environment.
Right. We might not always think about it, but the choices we make as humans have a ripple effect on other species.
We're all part of a larger ecosystem, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so we've gone from the ethereal realm of dreams to the surprising influence of creatures. Now let's step into the world of music, specifically Radiohead's Kid A album. It came out right at the dawn of the new millennium.
Kid A. That's an interesting choice. What's the connection here?
Well, think about it. The turn of the millennium was this time when everyone was freaking out about Y2K and what the future held. It was a mix of excitement and anxiety about this whole digital age that was emerging.
Ah, I see. And Kid A, with its experimental and kind of atmospheric sound, really captured that feeling perfectly.
Exactly. It's not exactly easy listening, but it reflects that unease and tension that was in the air at the time.
Yeah, those fragmented soundscapes and the cryptic lyrics, they evoke this sense of disorientation and unease, which was a pretty accurate reflection of a world that was on the cusp of major change.
It's like the music itself is a manifestation of all that collective anxiety about what the future might bring.
Which, of course, is something that a lot of people were, and still are, grappling with.
Right, exactly. But amidst all that dread and uncertainty in the music, there's also this glimmer of hope, when you say, like a sense that even in this chaotic world, there's still a chance to imagine a different future.
I agree. Kid A isn't just about anxieties, it's also about resilience and the possibility of forging a new path forward.
And speaking of shaping the future, let's talk about Bayard Rustin. He was a civil rights leader who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, often in the shadow of more well-known figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Rustin's story is a testament to the power of quiet leadership, the kind of impact one person can have even when they're not always in the spotlight.
He was a brilliant strategist and organizer, deeply committed to nonviolent resistance, inspired by Gandhi himself.
And he played a crucial role in mentoring Dr. King, guiding him in his development as a leader and a strategic thinker.
It's incredible to think about how much he accomplished, especially considering the challenges he faced as a gay black man, at a time when those identities were met with so much hostility.
His story is one of incredible courage, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to justice and equality.
So inspiring. It's a reminder that even in the face of what seem like insurmountable obstacles, individuals with a clear vision and a commitment to justice can really spark movements that change the world.
And what's even more remarkable is that he did all of this while navigating this incredibly complex social and political landscape, often putting himself at risk to advocate for the inclusion of marginalized voices.
He's a true example of how one person can make a difference. And speaking of making a difference, this deep dive has already taken us on quite a journey, wouldn't you say? From dreams to mosquitoes to rats to the anxieties of a new millennium and this powerful story of quiet leadership.
It is fascinating how all these seemingly unrelated topics actually connect to this larger narrative about the human experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we're not even done yet. There's still so much more to uncover in this deep dive. Stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break.
As we've been talking, I keep thinking about this theme of uncertainty. It seems like it's woven through all these stories, the mystery of dreams, the unexpected impact of creatures like those mosquitoes, or even those anxieties about the future we were talking about with Kid A.
It's true. It's like we're constantly trying to make sense of a world that often feels unpredictable.
Right, and maybe that's part of what makes life so interesting, If we knew exactly what was going to happen, where's the adventure in that?
That's a good point. But it also makes you realize how much we rely on things we can't fully control or predict.
And how we're constantly adapting to new information and changing circumstances. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
This reminds me of the brown rat story we were discussing earlier.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, those rats didn't have some grand plan to conquer the globe, did they?
Yeah.
They just followed opportunities, adapted to new environments, and, well, they thrived.
You're right. Their story is a good reminder that adaptability is key to survival, especially in a world that's always changing.
And it's not just about rats, right? It applies to us humans too. We're always facing new challenges, and our ability to adapt, to find creative solutions, that's what allows us to keep moving forward.
It's like a key takeaway from this deep dive so far, you know? Whether it's dreams, creatures, or even music, there's this underlying message about resilience, this amazing human capacity to find meaning even when things feel chaotic.
I like that.
Yeah.
Even in the face of uncertainty and change, there's always something we can learn, something that can inspire us, and something we can do to shape our own future.
Exactly. And that brings us back to another important theme, interconnectedness.
Right. Like how those tiny mosquitoes played a role in a major historical turning point. It's mind-blowing.
It really shows how seemingly small or unrelated events can have this cascading impact, you know? We often focus on the big picture, but it's those intricate connections that really shape things.
It makes you realize that history isn't just dates and battles. It's about people, their dreams, their fears, and how all those individual stories come together.
Yeah, those personal stories often reveal the nuances and complexities that get lost in the grand narratives.
And they also remind us that everyone has a story, and every story is a part of this larger tapestry.
And that tapestry is always evolving, you know?
Yeah.
Shaped by the choices we make, the actions we take, and the connections we forge.
Okay, so we've got dreams, creatures, anxieties, interconnectedness. But I also feel like there's this thread of hope and resilience running through all of this.
Oh, absolutely. These stories acknowledge the challenges and the uncertainties we face, but they also highlight the human capacity for hope, resilience, and that pursuit of a better future.
Like Marcus Garvey, his dream of the Black Star Line might not have fully come true, but his vision inspired so many and helped fuel a movement for change.
And then there's Bayard Rustin, working tirelessly behind the scenes, facing his own personal challenges, but never giving up on his commitment to justice and equality.
It's so inspiring to see how individuals can have such a profound impact, even when they face seemingly impossible obstacles.
Their stories are a testament to the power of vision, perseverance, and the belief in the possibility of a more just and equitable world.
It's like they're reminding us that even in the darkest times, there's always someone striving for light, someone fighting for justice, someone who believes in the power of human connection and compassion to overcome adversity.
And those stories can inspire us to do the same, to find our own ways to contribute to making the world a better place.
You're right. It's easy to get overwhelmed by, how complicated everything is. But these stories remind us that even small actions can make a difference.
Exactly. We might not all be leading marches or starting shipping lines, but we can all find ways to make a difference, you know? Whether it's mentoring others, speaking out against injustice, or just being more mindful of our impact on the world around us.
It's about recognizing that we have agency, that we're not just passive observers, but active participants in shaping the future.
And even in the face of all that uncertainty, we can choose to focus on hope, on resilience, on those possibilities that are out there waiting for us.
This is really making me think. I don't know about you, but this deep dive has given me a lot to consider.
Me too. It's amazing how all these different topics have come together to create such a rich and thought-provoking conversation.
It really highlights how much we can learn when we explore different perspectives and make those connections between ideas that might seem totally unrelated at first glance.
That's what makes the deep dive so cool, right? It's not just about absorbing information. It's about engaging with ideas, questioning our assumptions, and making those connections that spark new insights.
I love that. Before we wrap things up, though, I want to circle back to Bayard Rustin's story. We touched on his mentorship of Dr. King, but there's so much more to explore there. I mean, it's incredible to think about the impact he had behind the scenes, guiding and supporting Dr. King. Like, his story really shows the power of mentorship, right?
It really does. Rustin, he saw King's potential, and he knew how important it was to, nurture those leadership skills. So he shared his knowledge of, Gandhian principles and helped King really hone his strategic thinking. He was in many ways, a behind-the-scenes architect of the entire movement.
Yeah. It was like he was this hidden force shaping events. And to think that without his guidance, who knows how things would have turned out, right?
It makes you realize we don't always see the full picture, do we?
Not at all. And it just shows how powerful mentorship can be. Like, his guidance didn't just impact Dr. King, it impacted history,
No doubt about it.
Makes you think about the mentors in our own lives, the people who've guided and supported us, even if we didn't realize it at the time.
It's a good reminder to, appreciate those people and maybe even think about how we can be mentors to others, share our own knowledge and experiences.
It's like paying it forward, right? But we can't forget that Rustin was doing all of this during a time when, being openly gay was incredibly risky, especially for a black man. I mean, it really speaks to his courage and how committed he was to justice.
Absolutely. He understood that progress meant challenging those societal norms, advocating for those marginalized voices, and he was willing to put himself at risk to create a better world.
So, from the depths of our dreams to those unexpected creatures, and from those anxieties about the future to the power of mentorship, this has been quite a deep dive.
It has. And I think what connects it all is that human desire to understand our place in it all, right? To find meaning, even when things feel uncertain.
Like we're all looking for those sparks of hope, those stories of resilience, to remind us that even when things are tough, there's always that possibility of something better.
And those stories, they're all around us, just waiting to be discovered. Sometimes it just takes a little digging to see the connections and look at the world with new eyes.
That's what I love about the deep dive, right? You never know what you'll find, and the journey is just as rewarding.
And there's always more to learn, more to explore, more connections to be made. It's an invitation to keep asking those questions, keep seeking understanding, and keep embracing how complex this world really is.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time. Keep exploring and keep dreaming big.